Okay, at 6 p.m. we'll call our meeting in order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do you have roll call, please, Maureen?
Mrs. Medina? Here. Mrs. Head? Here. Mr. Beard?
Here.
Mr. Davis?
Here.
Mr. Crane?
Here.
Mrs. Reynolds? Here. Mr. Bengel?
Here.
Here, first item tonight, we have a special recognition of a couple of members. First one tonight is Jill Tome. Am I pronouncing that correct? Thank you. Would you please step up?
Yep. Should I come up there?
Come on up.
We need you on camera.
Not a camera first.
Jill Tome has been employed by the Wisconsin Rapids Public Schools for 20 years, with 19 of those years serving at Woodside Elementary. Prior to coming to WRPS, Jill also taught 2 years for the Stevens Point School District. Teaching is a second career for Jill, who previously worked for 20 years as an office designer at Emmons Business. Jill has been involved in various district committees, including Benchmark Book, Progress Report, and Build Your Own Curriculum. In her spare time, Jill enjoys reading, sewing, walking, and baking. In retirement, Jill plans to spend time with her grandsons in Chicago and visiting her daughter who lives in Arizona. Jill, we are grateful for your many years of service at WRPS. Congratulations on your retirement. Carolyn Stanford Taylor, the State Superintendent for the State of Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. Presented to Jill E. Tom in recognition of 20 years of commitment and service to the education and well-being of our young people. These contributions are acknowledged with this expression of grateful appreciation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy your retirement.
Thank you. I will.
Our other honoree tonight, Ann Lee. I've asked the board to come forward, please. Welcome. This is a certificate of commendation presented to Ann Lee in recognition for your service to the children of the Wisconsin Rapids Public Schools for 12 years from 2007 to 2019. I would just like to say thank you for all the guidance you've given over the years. It was an absolute pleasure to work with you. I miss working with you, and I hope you're enjoying your free time.
I am. Just wanted to say that, Jill, I'm really sorry we're here together.
I know.
Because I wanted you one more year to have that little guy back
Oh.
there.
Yep, Ann's children were at Woodside many years ago when I
Yes,
started.
and now we're starting all over.
Yes.
again. So,
Thank you.
good thing to do. Thank you. Yeah.
Keep the big.
Okay, the next on our agenda tonight is the minutes.
Okay, I would make a motion to approve the regular Board of Education meeting minutes of June 10th, the special Board of Education meeting open and closed session meeting of June 10th, and the special Board of Education meeting, the budget hearing, which is June 24th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the regular Board of Education meeting minutes of June 10th, the special Board of Education open and closed session of June 10th, and the special Board of Education budget hearing of June 24th. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Do we have any comments from citizens and delegations, Lynn?
No.
Thank you. We'll move on to committee reports. Educational Services, Mary.
Okay, thanks, John. Educational Services held its regular monthly meeting on Monday, July 1st, 2019. There was one consent agenda item. So with that, the committee recommends and I move to approve ES1, which was the pupil academic standards that will be in effect for the 2019-20 school year. Craig Brown presented pupil academic standards on which the WRPS curriculum is based and which will be in place for the 2019-20 school year. which include Wisconsin standards for theater education, Wisconsin standards for dance, and Wisconsin standards for world language. The CAI committees for English language arts, physical education, and world languages will be using these new standards to develop future curriculum changes and modifications for their respective content areas. As required in state statutes, notice of this information will be provided to parents through the WRPS website.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve ES1. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and then we had one update, achievement gap reduction, end of the year report. Let's see. Craig detailed information relative to each of the school's performances in grades kindergarten through grade 3 to achieve district benchmark goals set for reading and math. The committee discussed the report and considered how the Student Achievement Guarantee in Education, which was SAGE, initiative has changed and evolved to current AGR requirements, performance objectives, expectations of students, and success in attaining the objectives. And with that, I make a motion to accept the Ed Services Committee report of July 1st, 2019. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the Educational Service Committee meeting of July 1st, 2019. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you, Mary. We'll move on to business services. John.
Thank you, John. Business Services met on July 1st, and the meeting was called to order at 6:30, and we had no public comment. Out of our meeting, we had 5 consent agenda items. BS1 is a proposed modification to the, let me back this up. The committee recommends, and I move, that we approve the proposed modification to Board Policy 723.1 Rule, Emergency School Closing Procedures for first reading. And BS2, the committee recommends, and I move that we approve the proposed National School Lunch Program equipment grant in the amount of $7,594. BS3, the committee recommends, and I move that we approve the purchase of the 140-quart mixer from Bolter at a cost of $11,403 to be used in the school lunch program at Mead Elementary School. BS4, the committee recommends, and I move that we approve the revised 10-year facility plan with further additions as discussed. And BS5, the committee recommends, and I move that we approve the purchase of the 2019-20 school supplies listed as approved in the meeting and in the minutes. Did anybody want any of those called out? Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve BS1 for BS5. We have roll call, please, Marie?
Mrs. Heck?
Yes.
Mr. Frings?
Yes.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Medina?
Yes.
Mr. Bembo?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Rail?
Yes.
So a little bit of detail on BS1 is that the school closure, with all the school closure days we had, it was recommended that the secondary level students get dismissed first rather than the elementary schools. That way, the older siblings can be at home first before the younger siblings arrive. So in checking with the bus contractors, they said they can easily accommodate that change. Then the second BS2 we had was the National School Lunch Program Equipment Grant, which is always good to have money when we're trying to buy equipment. So there was a grant in the amount of $7,594, which covered part of the purchase of BS3, which is the 40-quart mixer for at Mead Elementary School. Then the biggest discussion we had was the revised 10-year facility plan. And actually that plan has been modified since we last looked at it, and in the current packet, the final modifications were given, and they were approved with the final modifications. We did add, at the request, pitch was missed on the original sheet, and then there were a couple of other items. And the plan is a pretty comprehensive plan that Ed put together for us, and it's got a rating system. There's a 1, 2s, and 3s on it, with 1 being the most urgent within the next 1 to 2 years, 2 being urgent with a 3 to 5 year period, and 3 being least urgent with 5+ years. If you note, there are still some schools that we are no longer using, such as East Junior High and Vesper and Pitch. but we do have tenants in pitch, and we're soon to have a tenant investor. So that is the information on that, and then the school supplies is, if you looked, at least it was a little bigger in print this year, so you could read it a little bit easier to it. And it was shopped pretty well. We do have a couple new vendors, and Ed's group is expanding some of the vendors that we use, and also being part of a purchasing group has helped us where we get some better pricing. He also pointed out that several of the items that if you look at pricing from 5 to 10 years ago, they're actually less now than they were 5 to 10 years ago. So some of the cost savings are were also shown and pointed out at the meeting. So then we had updates of the school district, 4K open enrollment out through Port Edwards, the billing for that, and there were no future agenda items. So with that, I move and the committee recommends approval of the balance of our minutes.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the meeting minutes of the Business Service Committee of July 1st, 2019. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Thank you, John. Down to personnel. Sandy.
Personnel's met on July 1st at 6:33 p.m. There is no public comment. From that meeting, we have 5 consent agenda items, and they are as follows. Number 1, the committee recommends and I move to approve the 6 professional staff appointments. 2, the committee recommends and I move to approve the 18 support staff appointments. 3, the committee recommends and I move to approve the 2 professional staff resignations. 4, the committee recommends and I move to approve board policy 365.1, network and internet responsible use and internet safety policy for students, and this is for second reading. 5, the committee recommends and I move to approve board policy 365.1, rural network and internet responsibilities use and internet safety guidelines for students for second reading. But there were 2 changes. On page 1 of it, we left out the word comprehensive because we figured sometime in the future something could come up, nothing is comprehensive. And on page 4, we took out AV director, but I think we should put in director of technology in place of AV director.
We just left that out. The conversation was, since we have media specialists in there, as far
Okay.
as your first point, and there's one, accessible there's somebody accessible throughout the district. Easy to find if you Googled it on the website or you searched it, so that's why we left it that way, and they can bring it up the chain if necessary.
Okay, all right. Does anybody need anything else down?
I'll second that then.
We have a motion and a second to approve PS1 through PS5. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And then we got a discussion concerning emergency school closure options for hourly support staff. Last year with our unusual winter of 8 snow days, some of these lost a lot of hours. And some of the discussion was, well, some may be able to make it up, some not. Would it be after 2 days or whatever? There was some discussion. There's gonna be some more research and it's gonna come back to the committee sometime in the near future. So with that, I move that the minutes be approved as printed from July 1st, 2019.
Sorry.
And a motion and a second to approve the Personnel Services Committee meeting minutes of July 1, 2019. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you, Sandy. We'll move on to agenda referrals, information requests. Do we have anything tonight?
Looking at on the legislative scene, it's been a busy last 4 weeks since our last report in June. And I'll start at the local level because we've had some happenings there, and then we'll take a look at the state level in terms of what's going on with the budget and what our legislators voted on and the releases they've put out since then. So I just want to start at the local level. About a week after our last board meeting, our anti-bullying ordinance that went before the city council did pass. And I want to thank Craig for all his hard work in getting that to the committee there and getting that passed before the full council. It did pass on a 5-4 vote, and I don't think, in terms of that being on their agenda next week, that was.
I was under the impression it needed to go through a second reading,
Okay.
which I think is taking place
Yeah.
next Tuesday.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
but based on the way the first reading went, I think we're gonna be just fine.
So that was step one on that process, and I think that was a good positive step at the local level to get the ball rolling and to have some conversations to address bullying. Now looking at the state level, I want to start by talking about what came out of the Supreme Court. They recently ruled that the state superintendent must seek the governor's approval in rulemaking. And this is actually a reversal in course in terms of past rulings. Now the superintendent and the Department of Public Instruction must submit their proposed administrative rules to the governor for approval, as is required for all other state agencies. And as in earlier cases, WASB joined with the School Administrators Alliance in filing an amicus brief in support of the position that the superintendent should not be subject to such processes. Today's new ruling came despite the fact that the superintendent is a constitutional office and despite at least 2 prior Supreme Court decisions that held such a requirement as unconstitutional. So right now, it'll be interesting to see down the line. That's when we might see more changes to this, when offices change and in terms of different parties and occupying, well, the superintendent's nonpartisan, but different people having different ways of thinking. It'll be interesting to see down the line how that'll play out. Now looking at the budget, Governor Tony Evers signed the 2-year budget last Wednesday, and he used his partial veto authority to pump $87 million more into school aid than the budget Republicans had proposed and brought forward. And looking at some of the specifics on this, schools are now in line for roughly $570 million more in state aid over the next 2 years, compared to the $505 million that the Republicans had approved and sent to his desk. That boost includes, for special education, $97 million more for special ed, although that is below the additional $606 million that Evers had proposed in his initial budget. And he was able to funnel more money into K-12 education by changing the per pupil aid payment over the next 2 years. And with that being said, he was able to set those payments at $742 per student in each year, which, when all is said and done, that change amounts to $87 million more for funding. John Ashley, the executive director of WASB, put out a statement supporting this move. He said, quote, "We view the budget signed today by Governor Evers as a foundation for the future. We are pleased that the legislature provided a solid foundation for K-12 schools upon which the governor has been able to build." John states, "On behalf of all school boards across the state, we thank the governor for using his veto pen to improve the 19 through 21 state budget for our K-12 schools." And I wanted to take a look and see how our local legislators weighed in on this after Evers acted with his veto abilities. And as of this afternoon, Representative Scott Krug didn't release a press release. He didn't have a statement at all regarding how he thought one way or another that his vetoes would be for the better. Patrick Testin did release a press release on the morning of Governor Evers' changes, and I'll read a few points that are relative to his view on the funding for schools. It's titled, "Connect the Dots, Governor's Vetoes Hurt Rural Families." And I'm just reading this to, we'll tie it in at the end in terms of why I think it's relevant. But last week, the legislature voted to pass a budget which makes significant investments in Wisconsin schools, healthcare, and infrastructure. Unfortunately, before signing the budget on Wednesday, Governor Evers made several changes that negatively impact rural Wisconsin. Today, Governor Evers used his veto pen to cut funding that would have helped rural families, said Senator Testin. With that pen, he slashed through years of rhetoric and lip service to show how he really feels about those of us who don't live in Milwaukee or Dane County. And it keeps going on, but he basically ends up with going through other things, and to ending, he says, "To say I'm disappointed is an understatement." So the reason that I mention that is, whether it be a scathing press release like this or our representative not putting out any comment or any release, it really makes me question both of their effectiveness as our representatives. So I figured that was relevant to add the follow-up on how they think things played out for the budget. I think that covers the budget in terms of the initial release, what the governor did with his abilities, and then our legislators' comments. Lastly, the DPI released aid estimates on July 1st. And taking a look at this, estimated general school aids for 2019-20 total $4.74 billion for the state, which represents an 83.2 million increase over last year. Looking at across the districts, within the state's 421 school districts, 59% are estimated to receive more aid in 1920, while 40% are estimated to receive less, and 5 will have no change in the aid between 1819 and 1920 fiscal years. So that is the aid estimates that came out of DPI last Monday.
Thank you for the report, Troy. Appreciate it.
What were the 40% that didn't get raises? Why didn't they get them? Or is there no final reason to it?
I can follow up on that for
Okay.
next week. Craig, did you?
Yeah, the equalization aid formula is based upon a number of factors, so you'd have to, to identify the factors within an individual district, you have to get down to that kind of finite level. For us, we increased 4.56% or $1.5 million, and I think the clarifying piece around that is that that's not spendable dollars. That's equalized aid, which is part of your revenue cap. So it doesn't really affect, it would affect local taxpayers with respect to potentially lowering the levy, and I say potentially because we still don't know our pupil count, we still don't know our equalized property values, and we don't technically set our levy and finalize our budget until November, as is outlined in statute. So the equalization aid formula is based on a number of factors that include free and reduced or economic demographics throughout the state. It incorporates pupil counts throughout the state, incorporates property value. There's a number of factors that go into devising whom gets what with respect to the aid pie. But the difference there, like that increase for us, I can't emphasize enough, isn't new spendable dollars. It's within our revenue cap. Thankfully, with the budget, the modification to the budget, the new budget, the 1921 biennial budget, there is some revenue cap authority that districts will have access to. In 1920, it's $175 per pupil, and in 2021, it's $179. There has not been an opportunity to increase the revenue cap in the last, I want to say 8 years, but I might be wrong on that. It's been a while. I think it's at least the last 3 budgets, and it's probably been 4. In fact, I know it's been because the first budget 8 years ago, that's when we had a 546 on average per pupil reduction in the cap. So the cap room does provide real dollars in terms of an ability to generate, let's call it new revenue. And to highlight the difference between what was proposed by the legislature and the JFC is about $300,000, give or take, in new spendable dollars to our district. So that's where some of the delineation comes. If we were talking about the 200 per pupil, which is how the last budgets have gone, and in a general sense, there was revenue cap authority that was part of what the JFC had proposed, but we were planning on about $200 per pupil, and that would have translates for us to about around $1,900,000 to $1 million. And under this, through the governor's veto, that now increases to about 1.3 million. What's unclear at this stage is the modifications made to special education funding, because there were some modifications made there as well. And I have yet to see estimates with respect to what that impact looks like to us as an organization, because if you all recall, we transferred a lot of Fund 10 general fund dollars to Fund 27 special ed fund to cover the cost of educating our special ed kids. If we increase funding in special education, then one would consider that that would likely result in a corresponding decrease to a Fund 10 transfer. But that's not clear totally what that's going to look like. Is it dollar for dollar? Is it through a grant program? What's it going to look like? So I don't have the answer to that question. When we know more about that, what it means in terms of our legitimate budget, we'll probably know, I say probably, but hopefully by November, when we're actually, have these other pieces of data in place, pupil count and so forth. So what it means on the front end is about $300,000 new $300,000. What's the wrong say? $300,000 new dollars for kids here at WRPS, based on the governor's partial veto.
Are we considered a rural school district?
I think in terms of the state, the answer to that question is yes.
So we fared well, rather than not faring well.
Better than the proposed budget, yes. And Senator Teston may be referencing other aspects. The only part of the budget that I honestly give any care about with respect to because as a human being, it's much different, but with respect to education is the education aspect of the budget. And the 78 partial vetoes that transpired had to do with a lot more than just education spending, of course. And so I don't know. I'm not sure what the commentary, if that's around the education budget or if that's around partial vetoes around a number of other, grant programs and funding mechanisms and so forth and so on. I don't know what the context of Senator Teston's commentary is, but I do know with reference to education funding, the partial veto power does mean about $300,000 new dollars for us, which is clearly a benefit.
Step in the
Are
right
we done
direction.
now, or is there more trickery?
This should be it. Now should just be evaluating what's transpiring. I suppose it's possible that there could be some litigation that ensues, but I don't know over what, because the governor does have quite a bit of authority in the state of Wisconsin.
2 years. 2-year budget.
Yep. So we should be set.
Okay, next we'll move on to the bills.
Okay, I would make a motion that the bills be noted and the receipts be noted and the bills be noted, printed as, paid as printed. I should just start over.
I passed my disease on to you with inability to speak.
Thank you.
See if I get it right. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, motion is second that the receipts be noted and bills paid as printed. We have roll call, please, Maureen?
Mrs. Hack?
Yes.
Mr. Bembo?
Yes.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Frings?
Yes.
Mrs. Medina?
Yes.
Thank you, Maureen. We can move into new business. First item, possible action on employee appointments, resignations, retirement requests. Do we have any?
There are none at this time.
All right.
Good.
Can you believe it?
First time for a long time.
We still have positions to fill though, so you'll see some coming.
Okay, next item, Nexus Solutions will be present to provide an update on the status of district energy projects. So you two gentlemen are here to do that for us.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I can give you a little intro on these guys. I know Troy wasn't a board member at the time. We started a revenue limit exemption for the school district. John sat on the committee. Ultimately, we picked Nexus because, mostly because of the size of the projects they've done, and so far I'll have to say they've been really good to work with. So my biggest concern was, they're big, they're kind of from out of state, how much control we would have picking our contractors, but we've got a lot of control over that. They've really got us some good pricing on these projects through connections both, locally and pricing from out of the district here, so. Yeah, and Dylan here is taking over for Ike. You guys probably met Ike McWaters, I think at a meeting or two. Dylan's taken over, he's hit the ground running, he's right on top of things, so never missed a beat. And Jeff Mangan, he's been here before too, so I'll let them speak to it.
Yeah, we'll get going here. Thanks for having us tonight. We're just gonna give an update on the energy project here, going on in the district the last couple of years. So getting started here, I'll just kind of go through a quick meeting agenda. We're gonna talk about the 2018 project review. And we're also gonna kind of talk about the process we've made this year in our projects, some updates. As well as the budget update on where we're at funding with the project. And then also what's next down the road. All right, 2018 project review here. This was phase 1 of the project over at Lincoln High School. I know a lot of you probably are familiar, seen a lot of pictures already, but just kind of an overview. We had a gymnastics wrestling room addition, high school office renovations, pool renovations, lighting upgrades, and then a handful of mechanical improvements that included upgrading the air handling units, exhaust fans, dust collector, D-strat fans that go in gyms and basically push hot air down to the ground, and then added a cooling tower, and then updated HVAC controls. So that was phase 1 of the project, as well as some phase 2 there. 2019 mechanical improvements, so this is what we're doing this summer, just kind of want to give you an update. I know summer feels like it's halfway gone now, but Woodside and Washington Elementary, we got 2 mechanical projects that are going smooth right now, everything's on schedule. As you can see, these are some pictures of recently. We already got a couple boilers in there, and that's over at Woodside Elementary, as well as some pictures of the ceilings getting torn down, and we're going to be replacing some ductwork and VAVs. Just kind of upgrading the entire mechanical system. So we're looking to get units set up on the roof here in the next couple weeks and get them fired up so we're ready to go for staff and students to come back. These projects include some energy recovery ventilation units. They're basically an efficient air handling unit, more efficient than the older RTU units, as well as boiler replacement, and then in the classrooms, we got VAVs and radiant fin tube. So as well, we got lighting projects going on right now. We're probably getting close to wrapping these up, about 80% probably for this summer's work. As you can see, there's a list of schools right there in the district that are ongoing right now. But once this is complete, we'll be nearly LED completely, I think. Yeah.
We had to wait on, some of the rooms had asbestos.
Yep.
Joint compound, so we had some abatement projects this summer.
Yeah, along with this, we've had a lot of abatement ceilings that had to come down before the fixtures can go up. So we got to bring in a special contractor for that work. So these are ongoing. They'll be complete within the next month here. Additionally, we've got building envelope improvements going on this year at all those schools listed up there. You can see a few pictures over at Holland. That was probably a majority larger portion of the project. A lot of new windows there, which will be great. I mean, you can already tell walking through the hallways, they provide a lot better light than
They look
those
awesome.
older windows. So in addition on those, there'll also be window treatment going on as well here in the next couple months. You can see down there, that's the gym over at Howe. Originally it was a bunch of that old glass block. They ripped that out, blocked it up, and then we'll get some windows up high there to bring some light to the gym. As well, that bottom right corner there, that's a control joint. So a lot of these buildings, after years, they just deteriorate and need to be replaced. And it's basically an expansion joint, but it just prevents from, basically keeps the building holding up straight and makes sure there don't be leakage in water in any classrooms of the building. All right, so here I'm going to start talking about a couple things that's changed probably since you've originally seen the different projects that were going on. There's a couple removed from the budget here. We removed the welding machine exhaust fan replacement, and we removed the wash fountain replacement. Mainly in-house, just wanted to do some other things that would have been better. Ed and his staff,
We upgraded the welding exhaust, and then,
yeah, you guys did that in-house.
yeah, the basin was ADA compliant, so we were in question, that was in question.
Yep, so we took those back and found a few other projects to go move forward with here. We added some boilers at Woodside, replaced or added LED egress lighting throughout the entire district, and then the office remodel over at the high school, and then some structural improvements at Howell Elementary that we ran into that just need to be addressed right away. So just an upgrade summary, I'm going to go through these, and I got some pictures to go along with them just to give you an idea. We get, the summary is we did a lot of ceiling replacement, HVAC replacement, building envelope repairs, lighting, water conservation, and then door and window replacement. Up there in the upper right corner, that's actually an asbestos ceiling up there that we ended up ripping out, and those are some old fluorescent lighting that we got LED in now. And then down there, there's just some masonry repair that was needed. So ceiling replacement, here's a few pictures over at Lincoln High. Before that, there's an orange colored ceiling in there, so we freshened that up. And it's crazy, like when you put in those new white ceilings, how brighter it is just walking around as well, especially with the LED panels. HVAC replacement, this is the unit up in the mezzanine over at Lincoln. Door replacement at Lincoln as well. Seal it up. A lot of times those doors, the weather stripping will be coming off and you're leaking air.
There's also security issues with doors. After they've been in for a while, they don't latch properly and so forth, so.
Sure. There's an office remodel over at Lincoln as well, a little before and after pic there.
One thing there, we couldn't, if the office workers were in, but the kids weren't, we had to run the whole building. Now we can just run the office area, so there's huge savings there.
Pool renovations over at Lincoln as well. You can see on the left there, that was before, and on the right's the new, what it looks like now with ceiling and lighting. All right, then we jump to budget summary here, just to give you an idea of where we're at. Project budget, phase one, about 14.4 up there, and roughly 2.4 was capital funded. And then if you look down on the bottom there, capital project savings, that's what we saved with coming in budget. on the capital side portion, because some of the money in the capital didn't relate to RLE, which would be the high school office remodel and the pool renovations and all that. So that money's savings right there. Phase 2 and phase 3, so those 3 phases together, total project budget was $25,980,206, and we are now, current contingencies are $2,546,552, so that's what we saved on the budgets, and having good bids, good contractors, a lot of that's in play, so that allows us to put that money elsewhere and spend it on some energy projects.
10% under, that's a pretty good place to be.
Yeah.
We're able to, like, our window project this summer, that's probably the biggest one district-wide. There's 807 windows, and the local contractor got the work, so, you know, the money's staying in, you know, in the area too, so that's huge. As of 5 o'clock, they had 300 of them installed already, so.
Yeah, they're cruising.
They've been working 4th of July, Saturdays, Sundays.
So,
So,
like when they did this, I mean, they were in here.
yeah, all over the night.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
no,
think 2
that's-
weeks total for this area.
We have a very short window to get a lot of work done, you know, and this year with the snow days and stuff, it shortened it up. We're only 3 weeks in. You know, I wake up in the morning and I think, man, you know, it seems like we're behind. The window guys are 3 days behind, he said, right now. They're gonna make those up, work this weekend, but everything's on schedule, knock on wood.
Yep, all the equipment's here, and we were fortunate to get out for bid earlier. You know, I've seen a lot of schools where you're coming in, going out for bid late there, and you're waiting on materials or rooftop units to come at the end of the summer. It's always a crunch. Yeah, whatever it may be, it's always seems like there's a long lead time for the summer items, and that's just what you get working with schools. But being able to bid it out early is huge, especially for savings on your budget as well. You're gonna get better numbers if you bid it out early.
There's a lot of districts around us too. Stevens Point, Wausau, theirs are coming out for bid, you know, and we got ours in, thank goodness, early,
For sure.
thanks to these guys.
So what's next? Just got a few items here. Final budget, obviously we'll take a look at that once we wrap up towards the end here and see what we want to do with our contingencies and look at some other projects that would be beneficial and efficient. Completion of commissioning. So for those of you that don't know what commissioning is basically we do that all in-house. We have commissioning technicians that come in and they just make sure all the mechanical equipment that we installed is per specification, running properly, making sure that the controls are running properly, you don't have too much cold air coming in, hot air there, just to balance the system out right, and that's where you get your savings from. So we do that all in the house. We're also on this project, we're doing a retro commissioning, which is basically going around and commissioning all the old equipment as well, just to balance it and make sure it's running properly. So it's good that those guys are great. They usually end up coming together with a nice little list of the older equipment on, hey, you can put your money here and you'd have better savings and all that, so that's very beneficial for the districts. And then additional improvements that we're kind of under review or in design phase right now. So we can kind of touch on some of those. Some additional improvements we're looking at doing here are some more boiler replacements. We got 4 at Grant, 2 more air handling replacements at Woodside, replacing reheat coils with VAVs at Woodside. Adding glycol to the 1990 boiler loop at Woodside, and electrical distribution upgrades at Rams, and then generator replacement and additional door replacement at Lincoln High. So that'll be ongoing here, and looking to put those documents together, and we're in design right now, making sure we got everything together, and then go up for bid for those projects and get them rolling. That's all we got. Does anybody have any questions?
It's one I should know, but I keep thinking about it. To get the snow and rain off your roof, you let it run off. Well, why would you let it run in and then deal with it like that in big buildings?
Bigger buildings, well, a lot of it is, like I said, you get a lot of them have roof drains, that's huge, but you do see some styles of the slanted roof, but that can also be kind of a safety issue. I mean, I've seen a lot of schools where they put like the plastic grates on the side and then they get 2 feet of snow and ice and snow sliding down, especially when you got kids running around.
Flat roofs in Wisconsin aren't ideal, but like Dylan said, you'd have a sloped roof with a parapet wall, but you still have to get rid of that water off the roof. This year we had, an unbelievable amount of snow and rain so far this year, and our roofs are in pretty good shape. We got our 2 outlying buildings, everything else is pretty much new now.
Another reason for just the flat roofs at school districts is just because they don't have the room to put all the mechanical equipment and all that sort of thing as well. They may not have the mezzanines or boiler room, or mechanical rooms and that too.
So it's higher cost to put a pitch in. You're paying for trusses, and they're not just wooden trusses, you have big steel trusses, and those are more expensive than the flat.
Right.
And they're pitched, we had, and this is going back like 15 years, we had a roof consultant, SRI, come in and mark out all the ponding areas, and then those areas were built up through re-roofing now through the hail of 2008 and now 2012. So it's, our roofs are actually,
There's drains up there.
yeah.
The roofs are pitched to the drains.
They come into the school and then out into the storm drains, but,
Okay, that makes me feel better.
yeah. We had other
LEDs,
districts
Is
in
this
the
the
area.
last step in lighting, or are they gonna have another one in 5 years?
Yeah, you never know, right? It seems like there's always something new, more efficient. Nice things about these panels here is they just last too. It's the preventative maintenance cost. You're not going up changing them all the time.
We had
That's a lot of money there.
We had relamped with T8s and upgraded a lot of the ballast, and they were just starting to burn out to the point where we'd had to put new ballast in, new bulbs, new tombstones, the ends where the bulbs clip in. So it was really good timing on our part.
You can't do this with fluorescent bulbs.
Yeah. And these are a lot better for the learning environment.
And with the sensor, they're all censored too, so if you're not occupied in there, there's no kids or anyone in there, they're gonna be turned off. So that's huge savings wise.
These are 5,000K lights, so they're supposed to make people happier. And first project we did was at Lincoln during the school year.
Can you measure
And
that?
teachers came in from, that real dark yellow diffusers to bright lights like this, and that was our first lesson. Put dimmers on all classrooms. Because, they walked in and like, boom. But you go to any of the lighting seminars and they'll tell you 5,000K or higher for any classroom.
Especially in the winter.
Offices, yeah. So it mimics, 5,000K mimics daylight, so,
Until the kids start falling asleep, and you just gotta turn them up a little bit.
yeah. And I've talked to teachers that have been doing that when they come in off the playground, because it's so bright out there, kids kind of shut down for that first few minutes. And, they'll put the lights up at 100% and then slowly dim them back down, just kind of wake them, keep them awake.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you guys.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, the last item is discussion and possible action to approve a lease for CISA 5 to utilize Vesper Community Academy facility.
Yeah, so I included in your packet a proposed lease. We've been in contact with CISA 5 since probably late May, which is why you didn't see it appear earlier on the June agenda. Turnaround was a little too tight as we were talking about language and so forth. But the proposal, if I were to pare it down to the important aspects, is that they're willing to pay us $23,000 a year in rent. And they would be responsible for Wi-Fi and phone. And we would be responsible for things like snow removal and transporting, having them pick up food, which they already do, because keep in mind the Vesper Alternative School, or the Wood County Alternative School is already out in Vesper. They're just relocating to our building. I also shared with you some costs associated with just having Vesper sit there. This lease agreement does not recoup all of those costs, but it goes a long way of having that building be utilized for something, and takes off anywhere from a half to 2/3 of what, some of that overhead happens to be. The fact that we're leasing from CISA 5, of which of course is a consortium that we're part of, is beneficial. They have similar lease engaged with other districts in other areas in CISA 5. And by and large, I'll steer back. The snow removal, we do already, because that's a pickup, drop-off point for buses. So we gotta have it clear the parking lot and so forth, so if a little bit of extra shovel power around the building on occasion has to be done. It's not a massive increase or time or energy. And we are already making food, and they go pick it up from Rudolph, I believe, is where they get it from Think. And so that doesn't change. Some of the other aspects is that there's some equipment out there, desks, chairs, tables, so forth, that if we're not using, they're gonna be able to use. If we need to use them, we will use them. I mean, it's our equipment, but it's not anything that, the stuff that was completely usable and needed by us out of that building has already been taken care of. One thing it does horn in on in the short term is storage space for Ed and his folks. And so working through that, if this is executed, they do want to move in early August and get things situated, which makes sense because they start school around the same time that we do. So, you know, by late August, they're going to want to be rocking and rolling. We've worked through it with Ed and his folks, Lizzie and her folks, Dan and so forth. So, you know, it is what it is, I guess.
How much of the building would they be utilizing?
They are going to utilize the kindergarten area, and then of course like the gym, and I think the library, the media center, and a few other areas. They only have like typically 8 to 10, maybe, I don't even know if they go to 12 kids, of which we have 5, so predominantly there are students. One of the questions that was out there too, does that mean that we're gonna get a decrease in the cost to have our kids attend that school? And the answer to that question is no. I mean, what they're paying now to lease the space that they were in is pretty approximate to what this lease request is. So it's kind of a mutually beneficial agreement in that we'll generate some revenue off of a building that was otherwise vacant, and that's pretty much where it ends. You know, it's not as though, I mean, we could take our $23,000 in terms of a decrease in our contract cost to have kids out there, but it doesn't make sense to me. You know, we're paying for those kids to be in that program anyway.
So it looks to me like that's a year-to-year lease, so if a potential buyer came along, we would
It is.
still have the opportunity to
The
sell
other-
the building if necessary.
Correct, and the idea that we're working with CISA 5 is, I would argue, similar to working with like a local nonprofit like Boys and Girls Club or the Y, where, you know, they want to be good neighbors and good tenants, and we have a good relationship with CISA 5. One of our board members is on the CISA 5 Board of Control. It's not like entering into a lease with some private organization or somebody that you're not completely unfamiliar with. And yeah, I've every belief that if there were some modifications here now mid-year, would we be able to do something? Probably not. And I would, when you're looking at buying and selling school buildings, which is not easy to do, but let's pretend you are, I think people recognize that you have to make some concessions, and, you know, it's not a 30-day process. You know, it might take a little bit longer to relocate. And we would be a partner at making that happen, you know, so since it's our building and we have a tenant, we would figure that out step by step and work through it. But I have no question, much like the Boys and Girls Club, that they're going to keep us informed, we'll keep them informed, and if we need to make a modification, I don't have any inkling that it would be a stretch in either direction.
I have a question on page 2, under number 5. The landlord should provide all necessary routine maintenance. What does that mean? Because if we look at the contract that we had with Pitch, we didn't provide the routine maintenance. So what are we defining routine maintenance as? Cleaning, replacing light bulbs?
They're gonna take clear of cleaning, but if we had to do like replace light bulbs, fix a door handle, or, you know, hey, the front door doesn't latch appropriately, we'd send our people out to take care of that.
And we found that with Pitch a little bit too. They had a pretty good maintenance staff at one point, but they've been rolling through so many people. I think Kurt Hoyer is now their operations director, so varying skill levels. We're over there doing some work anyway. So we basically at Pitch, we have building envelope, boilers, you know, anything. You know, this, I don't know what they have. You know, I'm sure they contract their cleaning out, but I don't know what they have for maintenance. So an empty building is actually, a lot of times it'll deteriorate faster than having somebody in there because nobody notices the small drip until it's a flood. So we've actually, in the last year, caught 2 plumbing issues because we have people out there checking it once a week that could have potentially flooded the school. So it's really not a bad thing to have somebody in there. It'll be a little more work for our maintenance staff. You know, I mean, the little stuff like ballast and stuff, you know, small stuff like that.
And then on page 4, under entry, it says on line 2, landlord shall establish custodial times. What do we mean custodial times?
So that would be based on if we need to do some repairs, you know, if there's something that we need to do, that would be based on our discretion of
Okay,
when
it's
we
not
can
the
get.
custodian coming in and cleaning and da-da-da.
No, our people aren't gonna clean the space by and large. Now, there might be a possibility where, you know, CISA 5 calls up and says, well, hey, we've got kind of a larger project, is there any way we can work together to accomplish that? I would guess something like that could happen, but normal course of action, it's going to be very little work on our behalf aside from things that we've already been doing. And then if the phone rings to do a minor thing here or there, that would be at our discretion and our time. So if we can't get out there that day, we'll do it when it's appropriate.
Do we have, I know in a lot of our buildings, you know, if something fluctuates with the heat in the winter, your alarms go off and all this. Is that true at Vesper too?
Yep.
Okay.
And Vesper, because we have tunnel plenum there, we keep that building a little warmer. I think this year when all said and done, we'll have about 13,000 utilities out there with the building empty. So, you know, of course, occupied, we're gonna keep it at the day set point of 70. In really cold weather, we keep that building at 70 anyway, because otherwise it would freeze up on the ends. And then we have wet insulation in the roof there, so it's really not as efficient. as most
So there's
of the
water infiltration in the wood roof?
Yeah, it needs a roof, I mean, it does, you know, and we've been patching it. We only had one leak out there, quite surprisingly, this winter. Happened to be right in a smoke detector and almost sent the fire department out there, but, yeah, for such a harsh winter, it survived it pretty well. You know, we'll have some upcoming maintenance costs, you know, pertaining to the roof. So, but we'd have those either way. If it's that empty, we still have to keep the water out. But there's water between the layers, so the roof bubbles up. So there's water between the roof deck and the unistrut inside.
And then there is, so that if it's year to year, we do have an out if we had like a seller or a buyer, right?
Yes.
Because when I was looking at terms B, it's like, I just see the tenant having the decision not to renew the lease. I don't see where we wouldn't have that.
Well, we retain that ability since it's our building as the lessor, but on the same hand, I had a conversation with Jeremy Beal, the administrator at CISA 5, and he said, you know, we get it, because I said, what I see happening with that building is that there's some repairs that need to be done that are just so costly that it's not gonna happen at some point in the future. And when, in talking with that, I mean, is that 10 years from now or 20 years from now, we don't have the answer to that question, but frankly, having somebody to generate some revenue for us on an empty building to the tune of 23 grand a year makes all kinds of sense. If that happens for 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years, it's, you know, some revenue that we're generating with having an empty building. So he knows that. He knows that there's opportunities, potential for the sale of the building. He knows that there might be a conversation that we have to have where we say, you know what, we'll fix it in a minimal sense, but you might have to find a different location because we're not gonna spend that kind of those kind of dollars on that building. And I have every confidence that that absolutely they're going to work with us with respect to what that is. They're simply happy to have a location that's out there in the town of Vesper that reasonably meets their needs.
Yeah, but they were in as like a little,
Yeah, old grocery store kind of a thing, so, yeah.
okay, that's all I have.
I need a motion? Yep. I'd make a motion to approve the lease for the CISA 5 to utilize the Vesper Community Academy facility. Second.
We have motion and second to approve the lease for CISA 5 to utilize the Vesper Community Academy facility. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Looking at the calendar, this is the last meeting we have scheduled for July. So, pending nothing coming up, we'll see everyone in August.
You might see a teacher negotiation survey coming around, and that would probably be the end of July if that works for everybody.
Yeah, we'll have that
Aside
today,
from that.
so. Okay, that we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.